Welcome to Guy Code, a podcast dedicated to imparting dad wisdom to my son, with your host, Koji Steven Sakai, and friends.
All righty, welcome. This is Koji, and this is episode number 47 of the Guy Code. I wanted to impart all of my wisdom to my son, but of course my son thinks he already knows more than me. So instead of trying to tell him now and having it go one ear and out the other ear, I decided to record them here in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, when he's ready, he'll listen to my advice in the future and not make the same stupid mistakes I made. I'll also bring on guests to impart their wisdom as well, and I have no doubt that their advice will be better than my advice. This week, I brought on actor Jennifer Yoon. Jennifer, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I am good. I've just been running around. I had a doctor's appointment and I just got back in time. So I'm excited to sit down and have a chat with you. Jennifer, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm an actor and producer. I was born in Texas and I grew up in the San Fernando Valley since I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah. And let's see, I spent my time between Los Angeles, Albuquerque, and Atlanta. And I graduated from UC Berkeley, studied mass communications. Then I worked abroad for about 5 years, and I've been back about 6 years now.
Wow.
Back in Los
Angeles.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I'm just one thing I'm glad you didn't say the valley, because I believe the San Gabriel Valley is also a valley, so I take that personally. So I appreciate the San Fernando Valley. I appreciate you saying that.
818.
Like for a while, we were A1A2 or A1A8 as well.
Really? Okay.
A long time ago when I was young, and then we started 213, we became A18, and then we became 626, which is what we are now.
That's right.
But,
that's right.
Yeah, I represent. All right. Well, I brought you on to give some much needed life advice to my son, who's 9, but he's going on 40. I'd love to hear your first piece of advice.
Okay, so my first piece of advice is develop a sense of perseverance when you face obstacles. So try to develop grit. And mine ultimately became like a physical thing that also became a mental thing. So when I was young, when I was about 10 or 11, I attended a lot of swim meets. I was part of them, and one of our meets was at an Olympic-sized pool, and I've never swam that long. And I remember my dad was saying, go all the way, finish, don't give up. You don't have to be first, second, third. Doesn't matter if you don't place at all. Just do not give up. And I'm like, I was freaking out because I was the smallest of my age group, and I'm just intimidated by the length of the pool. So I dove in, I did freestyle. I'm going, and I touch the end wall, and I pop out, take my goggles off, and I don't see anyone in the pool. And I'm like, wow. And then I climb out, and I see everyone had already finished.
Oh, no. Okay. Wait,
we sat at the bleachers.
Oh, wow.
The point is, it was pretty difficult for me, but I didn't give up. I could have been DQ'd, disqualified, but I'm just like, just go all the way. You're probably thinking, what?
So were you doing freestyle? Wait, what were you doing? I'm sorry. Were you doing freestyle?
Well, I did different, but this one was a freestyle, and it just do not give up. Put in your effort and don't give up. And there was one time when I was in biology class, we had to dissect pigeons. Have you ever dissected animals?
No. Well, no. I asked out of it when I was a kid, so I didn't want to do it.
Okay. So we had to, and it was pretty difficult because we're in groups of 4 and we're studying it, and the teacher's like, okay, we're gonna have an exam in a week, but I'll let you guys come in an hour after class and study the anatomy of the pigeon. And so it was your choice if you wanted to go. And I'm like, well, if I have to do well, I better know the pigeon, the anatomy. And so I went every day after school, and it was based on a curve. And the teacher's like, okay, well, we finished, and the person who has the highest curve is Jennifer. And I'm like, oh my God, because I'm not the smartest kid in class.
Yeah.
Right. And I have to put in the effort. I know that about me. And so if I hadn't, I don't know what I would have gotten, but it's just, you put in the effort, you do it all the way, as much as you can.
And I'm sure your career being in the entertainment business is also having to persevere and work hard and grit, right? Because
Oh my gosh.
there's nothing's given to you, and especially in this business, and especially being Asian American or a person of color, even it makes it even more challenging in a lot of ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in this business, we face more no's than yes, right? 90% of the time we're auditioning.
90, that's great.
And 10% we're like working on set.
Yeah.
And so it's that kind of constant hustle, and you just got to put it in all and have a thick skin, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the two things. If you listen to this, if people who listen to this podcast hate me when I say this, but my favorite motivational speaker is this guy named Billy Alsbrook, and he has one of his talks. He always says that it's easy to keep going when you're the champion, when you never lose. You could just, because anybody could do that because usually you're winning, but he's the real sign of a real champion is when you lose and you come back again and win. Because that takes grit. It takes that perseverance to, even though you lost and you got your ass kicked and whatever it is, to get back up, to do it again, even if you've lost, and to win again is a true sign of a winner. He's like, that's the difference. And that's something that I think is really, really important. And it goes to the other piece of advice for my son always around this is that, my son's good at jujitsu.
Mm-hmm.
He's on jujitsu, and he used to face the kids that he could beat. Because he could just beat them easily.
Yeah.
And then I told him, like, no, that's not how you get better. You get better by facing people that you can't beat.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to get better, and you might lose, but it's okay because this is practice, right? This is the whole point of practice, is to get better, not to just show that you're better than people, which is challenging for all of us because it is difficult. And then the other thing I'll say around this subject, which is also dear to my heart, because as a writer, producer, I, even at midpoint in my career, hopefully it's a midpoint in my career, I still get mostly no's, right? I mean, I have big dreams and I want things to happen, but then most of it's still no. And it's what the funny thing I'll say about the no's for me is that every time I love a project, it never happens. But it's usually the projects I don't put as much effort. It's weird. I don't put as much effort into something, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's being shot. Maybe I should have worked on that script more, or like maybe I should have like put more effort, because it's just like, but it's this weird thing. So one of the things I've learned in my life is to like not, especially my writing, to take every project as important and not be like, well, I love this one because it's my idea, and this is not really because I'm just getting paid for it, and how to kind of to spend as much time and put as much energy into it. But anyway.
I totally see that. That same thing for actors, right? You put in all this effort and you don't hear back. You don't know if it's a no or a yes. And sometimes for feature films, it takes forever to hear back.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did this one project and I totally forgot about it. A month later, they said, all right, you booked it. I'm like, okay, what was this role? And funny enough, that movie I worked on went to Tribeca and Cannes, and it just got picked up by Lionsgate. So super excited about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But in terms of grit, it's really the obstacles that you're facing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how do you overcome it when that happens?
Yeah.
I apply that a lot to hiking because I'm a huge avid
hiker. Oh,
yeah. Cool. I climbed, I trained for it, but I climbed Mount Fuji in the middle of a typhoon, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because you have a certain amount of, I think you have a 2-month window. And I went towards like the end of it, and it was super windy. I was literally at an angle pushing through the wind, and it was raining. It was incredible. Wow. But I'm like, gotta finish the freaking hike. I trained for it.
That's actually funny because so I did this thing called the National Outdoor Leadership School. My course I took was a 1-month backpacking course where you go off trail. Never come back kind of thing, never coming back to like any kind of like camping, like it was all camping outside.
You're off the grid.
You're totally off the grid. Yeah. But one of the things, it was funny because I was actually the opposite. I was a hero hiker before. That's what I called the term of like, I would just like hike no matter what the situation, who was in the group. I'd leave people behind, and it didn't matter because I was just like, I'm gonna get there. That was just my attitude. And it was like, actually, and being in this camp or being in this training, and because it's a leadership training course, and being in this camp and hiking like consistently for 30 consecutive days, it actually taught me the opposite, which was like, I got to chill out. Like I got to get like, my whole group has to get there. It doesn't matter if I'm the only one that gets there, that's not helpful not helpful. Right. Or fun, and then actually it took me I got hurt on the hike. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I was the last person because I had to carry my pack still. It's not like anybody's carrying I had to carry my pack, and I
Yep.
hurt myself. And I just remember how like terrible I felt. I just kept saying, go, go, go. I don't need anybody with me, you know? And and I
Yeah.
remember feeling so bad. And I'm like, is this how I make people like feel bad when I hike? Because I was like, I was just like, 'cause I'd be like, why am I waiting for this fucking person? You know, like this person. Like, and so then it really changed the way I hike. But anyway, yeah, I love hiking. We should talk about hiking sometime.
Yeah. A hero hiker. That is hilarious.
Well, because yeah, because and now when I talk to my son about it, I'm like, it's not, you know, like if we don't make it to the top, it's fine. Like,
Yeah.
like that's not the point of the hike. But when I was a kid, it's like, no, no, I'm gonna scale Mount Whitney in like 4 hours. Or I'm gonna do it like not just get there, but I'm gonna do it in like as fast as I can. And
Yeah.
like,
I
and then,
mean,
you know,
yeah, the more you do it, you set a personal goal, but yours was with the group. And so,
well, and plus I usually had most experience. So I was like the leader of the group, which also
oh
made it
wow.
not a great way. Now it's like I go and I'm like super calm. And I'm like, it's all good. Like we'll make it there. We won't make it there. Like,
Yeah. You
but
know,
anyway.
yeah, there's a lot of beautiful mountains near Palm Springs, and they have
My,
Mount Baldy.
well, San
Um,
Gorgonio. Have you ever camped there?
uh, did I?
Highest point in Southern California.
I
It's
went to San Jacinto Peak Mountain.
oh yeah, yeah, that one. Where you camp? Did you camp on top?
I didn't camp on top. Is it the
Okay,
Cactus to Clouds hike? Because that
I don't
was
remember.
22 miles.
Yeah, I don't remember which hike it was, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I
there's
think.
one where you can actually like camp on top of the mountain peak,
Whoa.
which is
Yeah,
like which is crazy because usually you can't camp on the top of mountain peaks because of the like uh
yeah.
storms and lightning. But that's like one of the few only places in my life that I've ever camped on top of a mountain before, on like on the peak of a mountain. And I was blown away because that's the only place that you could do that. Usually, like you get to the top, you're like, oh, this is nice, and then you get down before it gets, you know, totally
Yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
But
Like my sister and I would hike. We'd start like 3:30 in the morning, or we would leave
yeah,
3:30 in the morning to get to Palm Springs or wherever, and we would start around 5:30 because if, especially in the summer, by the
it's
time you
hot.
summit,
Yeah,
it's freaking hot, and then they
yeah,
have to go back down. That's like a whole thing too, you know. So
yeah. Most people get hurt on the way down. Anyway. All right.
oh,
Well, what's your next piece of advice?
okay. So let's see. Be curious. Never settle, always be curious. If you're watching television or you're talking to someone and you want to know more, keep asking questions. Look it up. Look it up online. Read books. Volunteer. And when you volunteer, you get to learn about different kinds of jobs. And it's not always the generic, when you're a kid, they go, oh, an attorney or a doctor. But no, there's different jobs. Like you could be a coder, a forest ranger, an embalmer. If you don't want your coworkers talking a lot to you, there's so many different kinds of jobs.
Those are all bad jobs for Asians, by the way. You should say microbiologist, accountant, doctor.
That's so funny. Or an algae scientist.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah, sure. No, but like whenever I'm watching a show or a film, I'm like, wait, how does that work? Or some kind of water treatment. How does that work? I'm always looking things up because, the more you know.
Well, what knowing more, how does that help you, or what does that do for a
Well, I
person?
feel like the more you know, the more you understand, and the more empathy you can have, right? Understanding people's situations or problems. And then you start to go, oh, I get it. And before you just like, okay, whatever. It just helps you to expand your knowledge.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I love that for two reasons. One is that as when I teach writing, one of the things I always teach writing is the biggest mistake writers make is locking themselves in their room. What I tell them is that the best thing to be as a writer is a student of life. So you should watch TV. You need to be on YouTube, reading books, listening to podcasts, go to Starbucks and talk to the people in line with you. I mean, back when,
Yes, talk to
and,
people.
and when you get to know them, you'll hear these stories. I mean, like two of my last pitches for TV were things I saw on Facebook that my friends posted. Like that were just like, oh, that was a really interesting story. I've never heard of that. And then, like you said, starting to do research about it. And, oh, that's like, it became more and more interesting, and that's if I'm using Facebook as just a way for me to gain more knowledge,
Yeah. Or
and I
even
think,
reading magazine articles.
yes, yeah, anything. No, just, I read the newspaper, I read magazine. You have to kind of be a student of life, and really, and I like how you brought it around to empathy, because I think that's something that's severely missing in this world. I think right now, especially, but it's just you know, it always surprises me when I hear people say like, oh, I hate gay people. And then all of a sudden, like you have somebody in your life who's gay and you're like, oh, now I like gay people. I'm like, but you didn't like gay people before? Like, why does it take you like knowing somebody who's gay before being okay with gay people? I don't need anybody in my life to be gay for me to realize that gay people should be treated as humans, or black people or Asian or whatever it is, right? It's like, I don't need to have somebody might marry somebody who's black for me to be like, black people deserve to live. You know, like, like that's not, I could do that without it. But I think it's because we're lacking that empathy, you know, we're lacking that ability to like put ourselves into other people's shoes, you know.
And sometimes you can't blame people because it's what they don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And then sometimes it's our job to not educate them, but, you know, help them to learn more about whatever it is.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've been giving a lot of thought to this thing because it's, you know, especially looking at the last election, like when I watch this called What Would You Do? The show called What Would You Do? It's on ABC, I think. It's like where they do like experiments where they like somebody's racist against somebody in a store and to see if people will speak up for it.
Oh my gosh, yes,
right?
yes.
It's one of my favorite shows. And but what I've realized is I think a lot of people like say in the South, they're actually not racist when they see a person in front of them being like having a racism happen to them. But then if you question them about black people as a whole, or gay people or Muslim people or Asian people even, or whatever, they won't like them, or they'll say racist things. But when it occurs in front of them, or if it's their neighbors or their friends, they're like, that's wrong, you can't do that. You know, and it reminds me of in the 2012 election, there's a small Montana town who they were deathly afraid of Muslims attacking their city. Mm-hmm. Even though it's a small Montana town and Muslim terrorists are not attacking their town. There's not even a Muslim person within like 500 miles of that town. And yet they're so afraid. But I question if there was a Muslim person in that town, I bet they would actually be treated pretty nicely. Like nobody would be like that mean to them, at least overtly, you know. And I always think that that's like a weird thing our country has, you know. It makes me sad.
Yeah. I love that show. It really shows you the humanity of people, right? When they're actually trying to defend the person. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it gives you hope, right? It gives you hope that there are people out there, especially like, it even checks me sometimes in that, like you see it's like a Southern Arkansas town and everyone speaks with like super like heavy Southern accents. And my initial instinct is they're not going to help because they're racist. But then you see that there are actually a lot of them are willing to be helpful, and that it's really a check on me to be like, okay, that's not fair that just because you have a Southern accent means it doesn't necessarily mean you're racist. Right? But it's that because just in the same way that I think that, you know, if they hear my accent in LA, they'll be like, oh, you're whatever, right? Because you're from LA. But like, you know, we should take each other for kind of what we do as opposed to something physical or something how we talk or something, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I love that. I love how you came around to empathy. I was trying to figure out where you're going with the knowledge, so that's interesting. No, I mean, no, like I think it's important to have knowledge too, because I think too many people are not seeking knowledge. Like, right, the biggest difference between Democrats and Republicans, or conservatives and liberals, is the amount of where they get, how many news sources they get. And I think I was reading somewhere where it's like for like conservatives, it's like one. It's usually like one news source that they get all their news from. Whereas liberals, it's like 2.5 or something. I mean, it's not that much more, but like at least you're getting some different voices, right? You might be reading CNN and the LA Times or something, or, you know, you might have like multiple places at least that you're getting a little bit different from me, as opposed to all Breitbart or something, or Fox or whatever it is, you know. Anyways, okay. Sorry, enough of my talking. You're the guest. What is your third piece of advice?
Don't take yourself seriously. That took me a long time to learn, and I'm still learning. So a quick story. When I was working abroad for about 5 years, I would travel around Southeast Asia. And one of the places was in Thailand. And I went with a girlfriend of mine, and apparently we had two different objectives of why we wanted to go. I wanted to go to explore. She's been there before, so she's like, I'm gonna relax. I'm like, what's relaxing? I'm thinking on the beach, what is that? Her version of relaxing was taking naps and getting her hair done. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna go find some, you know, like different trips that you can take, or island hopping or something. So I go on this kayaking trip, and it's a 2-person kayak. I think we had a group of like 10 people or something. And I'm sitting in the front and I'm getting my paddle and I'm just like rowing and rowing. And I'm like, gosh, this is fun. It's beautiful. And halfway through, I'm like, oh my God, this is so tiring. Why is it so tiring? And then I like talk to the guy behind me. I'm like, yeah. And I see that he wasn't paddling the whole time.
What an asshole.
He's like, yeah. He's like the skinny version of Santa Claus, let's just say. And he's just like enjoying himself. I'm like, oh, a little too much maybe. And so I was like, and I'm like, oh, you're not paddling. And so he like picked it up and I'm like, I turned around, I'm like, are you going to paddle or not? But I didn't want to be that person. I'm like, okay, don't, overthink this. Enjoy what you're doing. You're burning more calories. Okay. Think positively. You're in a beautiful place right now. Beautiful water. Just enjoy. And so I ended up just talking to him and kind of peeking back to make sure that he was actually paddling, but don't take yourself seriously. Enjoy life.
How do you teach somebody not to take themselves seriously? Or is there a way to like help people not take themselves seriously?
Well, one thing I think of is I have to think of gratitude in terms of myself. Like, what am I thankful for? Just the basic foundations. And that helps me go, okay, I'm happy with this. I am thankful for this. And it doesn't help me to, explode. So that helps a lot for me personally. Yeah.
I always tell my son that he's the main character in his own life, in my life, but he's an extra and a background actor in everybody else's life. That he's just somebody that's in the background of, and it's because we all think that we're the most important people in the world, I think, but in reality, we're once you get like one or two people removed from us, we're not important at all. And I think that people get in trouble when they start to think that they're more important than they really are, But I think it's right. I think it's being grateful, and understanding where you are. Like me and my son were having a conversation the other day where he thought his cousin's house, which is a ginormous house, like probably over 3,000 square feet, which is big for Southern California, in a really nice neighborhood, is normal. And I had to break it to him. I'm like, that house is double the size of our house. And it's like, and it's like 3 times the size of most people's like houses. And, there's very few people, they don't have a lot of people in their house. And I was just trying to explain to him that, like you're lucky and those people are lucky and you have to understand, what other people have to go through,
Yeah.
in terms of being grateful for what you have versus what other people might have or might not have.
Yeah. And there's some things that you just can't control, and so there's a Buddhist maxim that says, hold on tightly, let go lightly. And that helps me. I mean, it's hard to actually exercise, but it's something that you can kind of think about and let it lead you. Cause I mean, especially in like acting, right? You like put in your best work and you're not going to get the benefits from that. You think, okay, I'm going to get hired for every project. No, it doesn't work that way. It could be so many factors of you're too tall or the person opposite you is a blonde. You can't have another blonde or brunette or whatever. It's out of your control, right?
Yeah, I was just interviewing some actor who was up for a really big role, and he didn't get it because the actor or the director thought the actor looked too much like his counterpart, and that he thought that people are going to be worried that they're brother or sister, even though he'd been training for this role for like 6 months with the director. And he's like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, but you're right. It's like it has nothing to do with how good he was or how bad he was or whatever. It had to do completely with something totally random, and only the director could see. Like nobody else thought it. It was just this one random dude who thought it. But that's hard to do. It's hard to do that Buddhist maxim, like especially in this world. You hold things. But I think one of the ways around it is by volunteering and putting yourself out there in ways to take yourself out of yourself, and one of the ways, and I say this a lot too, so everyone take this with a grain of salt, which is that one of the best ways I think to get better through from depression is actually by volunteering. And they proved this because it's like you're not thinking about yourself, you're not thinking about what's going on in your life that's going wrong or whatever. Yep. You're giving of yourself, and by giving of yourself, I think there's something not just mentally, but I think it's spiritually. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person who thinks that by giving of yourself, it heals something in you, and it's taking away from yourself and allowing you to be, become a better person. This is why me and my son, we pick up trash every Sunday because I call it our church. I call it our church, where we walk around the streets and and it's time for me and him to talk about life and stuff. But it's just, we give of ourselves and when we give of ourselves, it helps us too, which is the thing. But it's that gratitude of wow, all these people are throwing trash on the ground and we're going to go and pick it up. Even to the point of the little cigarette butts, which is really annoying, by the way. Don't throw it. People don't throw it.
I completely agree. It's not about, if you take the focus off of you and you think about how you can help other people, that helps tremendously.
Yeah.
And definitely volunteering is one way of doing that.
Yeah. Right. Sure. Well, what's your fourth piece of advice? And I believe this is your last piece of advice.
Listen to all kinds of music.
Oh no, that's terrible advice. I'm just kidding. Well, why? I'm just kidding. Why?
Music is a universal language, right? It speaks to everyone. It helps you to listen. You think about it and you feel however it makes you feel, right? I grew up learning the piano, and I still to this day love listening to classical music. It speaks to me. It takes you on a journey. It's like storytelling, which I often apply to acting as well. And there was one time my teacher, maybe it was her little strategic plan, but she had me and my brother work on a duet. It's this Brahms duet. And, when you're a teenager, you're constantly fighting with your brother or your sister, whomever. And we have to sit next to each other at the piano playing. And you're like, move your elbow this way, go this way. No, you scoot over that. And then you just don't get along and it just doesn't happen. And especially if it's for a recital, first of all, you have to learn teamwork. You have to bring the music as one whole piece of music.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like it just helps you to grow as a person. They even talk about emotional intelligence for children when you're learning music or you're playing the violin, guitar, whatever. Does your son listen to music or?
Yeah, he listens to music. Not the kind of music I want him to listen to, but yes, he listens.
What kind of music? What kind?
Right now he listens to this weird Minecraft music. That's so Minecraft, these YouTube stars or YouTube people, they take famous songs and remake them into Minecraft themed songs. So you'll listen to so it'll be a famous pop song, but then it'll have lyrics about Minecraft character. And he loves it. It drives me nuts. I can't stand it.
Right? Well,
I guess
that still brings on the creativity he's feeling.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, of course, as you grow older, you may listen to something else and you get different kinds of influences. I mean, what kind of music do you want him to listen to?
Tupac. I want to name him Tupac. My wife was the only person not allowing me to name him Tupac. If it was up to me, he would have been named Tupac.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. But I mean, but it's a lesson for me though. As a parent, I think I have to stop putting myself into him. I'm not him. He's not me. So just because I love rap and all I listen to is pretty much hip hop, I can't put my love for it on it. I can't assume that he loves it because I love it. And that's and that's just dreams. And I don't want to put my dreams into him. So I have to check myself a lot about those kinds of things. And this is an opportunity for me to check myself and be okay, that's fine. He should listen to what speaks to him. And I need to relax and not talk shit about it because it drives me nuts. But it is what it is. But explain. I mean, I'd love to understand why, listening, does listening to more kinds of music open your mind to things that are different perspectives? Is that kind of where you're going with it?
Yeah. There's a quote. I think it was when words fail, music speaks. And it's just, I think just music is a beautiful language and it can expand your mind, and it delves into your emotions, whether you know that or not, subconsciously, Yeah. So I just, all kinds of music. You don't know what's going to inspire or what's going to come out of it.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny because my guest, maybe 4 guests ago, he was my best friend, Garrett. He talked about how one of his pieces of advice was to never stop listening to new music. And his point was that the
Beautiful.
reason the reason you shouldn't stop listening because once you do, it means that you're old, and that you're not open to new things, and
Hmm.
that one of the ways to stay young, like not like physically young, but they're like emotionally and mentally young, in
Yeah.
terms of like knowing is to continuously listen to new stuff, and to
Right.
not be like for me, it's like 90s hip hop is like the only hip hop that's important. So like it's hard for me because I'm like this is like 19, from like 88 to like 2000 is like the only time hip hop was valid. And so, but now I've had to check myself and be like, all right, like I need to open my mind a little bit and listen to hip hop. Now because of you, I have to now try to open up to more stuff. I'm just kidding.
Why not? Like
No,
country.
no,
I love country.
you love country. Wow.
I
Okay. Is there
do.
any music you don't love?
I don't. I don't know. I love listening to, when Borders used to be around, before they went bankrupt, I would browse around the CD, the music section, and I would listen to world music, African music, jazz, classical, of course, opera. Just, I don't know. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah. Interesting. No, I like other music. It's just hip hop is my number one.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that.
But you're right. I think I would expand yours to like books and TV, and just not to be like watching the same thing, because it's kind of like what you said earlier about it's like a loop, right? If you're just listening or reading or watching the same stuff, you're not really expanding your knowledge. You're not really gaining an understanding of who you are, or the world around you. You're just kind of in a this kind of weird loop of people telling you what you want to hear, as opposed to learning new stuff and becoming more
Yeah,
empathetic.
and music have, they have their history, their story, their culture. You like makes you wonder, okay, so why this instrument used in this? What's the story behind that? Or why this beat? You just don't know.
Interesting. Wow, this is crazy, man.
So your homework this week is to listen to a new genre. Pick one and try it. If you have Spotify, I mean YouTube, whatever.
Whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I would listen to. I'd have to figure out, you know. I mean, I have to listen to things now. I have to listen to jazz more now as I've gotten older. But that's about it. But I'll have to, yeah, okay. My homework this week will be to listen to something new, and something new genre that I haven't listened to. Or, I mean, I've listened to everything, I'm sure, but to give it a shot, a real shot, in ways that I didn't want to
Yeah.
before.
I mean, Tupac and Biggie Smalls, and it's all great, but try like Bhangra music. Try
Wait,
uh,
I don't even know what that is. What is that?
it's like Indian, and
Oh, okay.
you can even learn about like their dances that come with it, or like musicals. I don't know if you're.
I mean, I've seen most musicals, I think.
Okay.
At some point, I've seen most of them, I think. My
Okay.
mom was a big theater person, so I used to have to go and suffer through lots of terrible musicals.
Well, it's
Sorry.
not for everyone, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I sound like a grouch. Well, I know that you only had four, but did you any of the conversations spark any kind of new advice, or any advice for my son? Any final advice?
Um, well, along with music and different cultures, I would say travel. If you can take him, or when he gets older, just travel on your own.
Yeah.
That's what I did, going around Southeast Asia as well. I went to Cambodia, which is a beautiful country. And of course, I went with like a friend, going to different countries, but you just learn so much.
Yeah.
And there's so much to just think about on your own, and you're taking everything in. One show that's super inspiring, and I've been watching it as a kid, is The Amazing Race. Have
Oh,
you heard of it?
yeah. Wait, how's it inspiring though?
Because you're teamed up with another person, and you're going around like 11 countries, 17 cities. I just watched the latest season and they went around 33,000 miles, and you're going through all these challenges, and there's the language barrier, and you have to work around with your partner to get to a certain destination by completing a task, right? So it
Yeah.
teaches you teamwork. It teaches about how you react in certain situations, and what you could have done in hindsight. There's just so many things that you can learn just by even watching that show while you're watching them travel around the world.
Interesting. That's funny. I was pitching a TV show that was a Japanese version of Amazing Race. You just reminded me of it a long time ago. It's actually a fun show. It was like similar in that, but different in that like you're by yourself. You're given $500 or something equivalent of $500, and then they drop like then they blindfold you and then they drop you off somewhere in the world.
Oh my gosh!
And your goal is to get as close to back home as possible. And you're going against other people who are trying, like, not dropped off in the same place, or dropped off somewhere else in the world.
Right.
And your goal is to like people would be dropped off in the middle of Africa with $500, and you had to make your way close to. First, you had to figure out where you are, and then you had to figure out like how to get someplace. And a lot of times it's just getting to the coast, right? Because that's how close you could get. Or some people were taking boats, and it was really that I like that show because it was, it forced you to be ingenious, because you had to like negotiate speaking a language, and then you had to negotiate like how to hustle, because it's not enough money to really do anything. You can't just take a plane, to some place. Or you could take a plane, but you could only go to like Russia, you could get close, or whatever it was. So it was a really interesting show. But
you have to think of creative ways to how to get to one place to another. I mean,
without spending a lot of money. Right. And you have to still eat, and you have to do that. So a lot of them would be taken in by families like that. They stay over.
And that means you have to encounter, or hopefully you'll encounter people who will take you in.
Yeah. And then get on a train or something, and then go across wherever, and then get off. And but yeah, amazing. Interesting. I've never heard anybody talk about Amazing Race. I'll have to give it a shot. I've never actually watched the show.
I love the show. I actually applied with my brother. I'm like, let's do it. Siblings, let's do it. We can do it. Didn't happen. I mean, I've heard stories where people would apply 8, 9 times and they would finally get it. But the timing, but that's always the timing with the other person, right?
Yeah.
Because he was in the U.S. military, and he just retired and he had time. I'm like, all right, come on. You're good physically. You can do all of those things. I can think of strategic ways. We can help each other out. We can do this. No, I would still love to, though.
You should keep applying. You never know.
Find that person who's willing to go on the journey with you, right?
Yeah, that's the hard one. Well, even when you travel, though, I think with your story about your friend, one of the things I always tell people is that travel buddies are important, because everyone has a different travel style.
Yeah.
Like my wife and I, in the beginning, we'd have a super different travel. Like I believe that if I'm not running for the plane, I'm too early. Whereas my wife wants to be there like 2 hours early. She wants to stake out a spot in a chair outside the terminal, and she wants to have all her stuff with her and lined up and ready to go. But I'm like, oh dude, I'm running. Like last call. And I'm like,
God, that's so perfect. Stressful.
Or I didn't like to know. I didn't want to. Yeah, but I did that every time, because that's how I traveled. Or even I wanted to, I never figure out where I was going to stay. This is before cell phones or hotels tonight kind of thing. And I never have any plans, but my wife needs to every day there needs to be itinerary. There needs to be but when I had a kid, we had to change that, because obviously I need to figure out where we're going to stay and have a little bit more itinerary. But for me, it was always no, I'd rather I just wanted to get there, and I'll figure it out once I'm there.
Be spontaneous.
But that didn't work for my wife, and she didn't want to travel with me, because so I'm the one that changed, obviously. And plus now after 9/11, it became harder too. You can't run for the days of running through security is a lot harder now, right?
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, it was a lot less secure.
I traveled with a girlfriend of mine. We went to the Philippines, and we actually went to several countries, but she would be in charge of these flights. I would be in charge with these flights, et cetera, et cetera. And there was one time where we had to catch the plane in the Philippines. When we get to the airport, and they said, it took off 2 hours ago.
Whoa.
And I'm like, what? That's not possible. And I'm like, but you said, I was talking to my friend, I'm like, you said it was I don't know, say 2:30 p.m. She goes, yeah, 2:30 p.m. I'm like, it's 2:30. I mean, right now it's 1:30. What happened? They're like, no. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, lesson learned. Look at the freaking time. Don't just believe my friend's words. Unfortunately, I didn't check myself. I just kind of went off of what she was saying. Sure. Had I checked, maybe a different story. I was like, oh my God. And so literally we had to go back, look for another place, last minute booking of I forgot it was a hostel or something. and spent another day, and we didn't have the budget for it, but we had to make it work. It was an adventure.
Yeah. But for some people, that's like my wife, that would kill my wife, you know, in terms of like, that would make this whole trip not fun. Whereas for me, that's like the most fun part. You know, if I miss the plane, I miss the plane. That's fine. My life won't be over. I'll like figure something out. Like, we'll find a place, I'll do something else. But
Yeah.
you know, for some people though, that's like the end of the trip. Like that thing will ruin everything.
Yeah, that's me. I'm the planner. I have to do this. But when that happens, it's like, what can you do? You can't do anything about that, right?
Yeah.
And they said the next flight's next morning. So you just have to deal with it. You're like, okay, well, what's plan B? Let's go. Let's do it. You know?
Whereas like I had no plans anyway. So I was like, okay, well, I guess we're spending another day here.
Yeah.
But that's what I always tell my wife, is that if I'm running for a plane and I miss it, that comes with the game though, is that I have to be willing to miss it.
Yeah.
Like if you're not willing to miss it, then you can't do that. If I'm willing to miss it, I miss it. That's just what it is. I can't get down on myself. I can't be mad that I missed it if I'm going to be that late. You know, I just have to like, it's just like I lose my wallet constantly. And so it doesn't bother me when I lose my wallet, because I lose it so constantly, because it's like, well, I know exactly what to do. I can tell you exactly what to do when you lose your wallet, because I lose it so much. And it's like, well, I can't get mad that I'm lost my wallet, because I literally lose it like, you know, every like 3 or 4 months.
Oh my gosh. Is it because you take it out and you place it somewhere and you forget it, or
or it falls out,
out of your pocket?
Or all of the above, yeah. Or I leave it somewhere, or it drives people crazy. It drives my wife crazy too. That's why I don't carry cash, because if I carry cash and I lose my wallet, I'm gonna lose my so. At least with credit cards, I could get my money back, right? I can't get my cash back.
I mean, it'd be so cool if there's like a tracker, right? You can put it in your wallet.
You could, yeah. There is the tracker thing, but
really,
people just take it off too, you know.
Oh.
But it's just a wallet. That's why I don't put like important stuff in it, because you just
cards, social security.
You want to put it? I don't put it.
Passwords on a paper in there.
I never put passwords on it. That's a terrible idea.
Yeah. Wow. Well, now that you have your son, do you feel like you're a little bit more organized when you travel with your family?
No, I let my wife do it.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah, because my instinct is not to. So.
Hasn't influenced you at all.
Well, it's influenced me in that, like, I understand that it made me realize that if I do it the way I want it, my wife is going to not have fun on the trip, and that's not fair. And so in order to have fun, I'm like, okay, we're going to get there 3 hours early, and that's cool. And I just have to make it okay that I'm there 3 hours early. I'm just walking around the airport and just trying to be, you know, whereas, so like, that's the thing. Like when you travel, if you're not willing to adjust to the other person's, then it's not somebody you should be traveling with, because that's just gonna be a hard, you know, it's a hard thing if you have 2 different travel styles. Like you said, like some people like they want to see, like, you know, the pyramid, and I'm like, I don't really need to see the pyramid. Everyone's already there. Like, can we go somewhere else? So that's why I think traveling with you by yourself is like usually the way to go, especially if you're, you know, I mean, like, I think it's a little easier for guys, but you know, it's good for you. And I'll tell you a quick traveling story is that my one of my friends, he's from high school. He was an asshole, the biggest asshole in the world. And he was super rich. His family's super rich. And I remember he was just super big jerk. And his grandfather died. And his grandfather left him a ton of money. The stipulation on his money was that he had to go travel for a year. And he only had X amount of money, like not a lot of money per month. And he had to go by himself, and he had to go to like 6 continents or whatever. He couldn't go to Antarctica, but everywhere else he could go. And he had to travel, and he had to prove it. He had to prove that he was by himself, and that he was and that he had been in different places. So anyway, he went.
I love that.
He didn't want to go. He was like really angry. He didn't want to go, but it's like life-changing kind of money. And he went, and he came back, and he was like a totally different person. He was like a way nicer guy. He was like, he wasn't much of an asshole. He was much more grateful. And now he was rich. I mean, personally rich, before he was just family rich. But it really, I mean, you can tell, like, it changed his life, having to live in hostels, going to like different countries, you know, making new friends and all that stuff. It really, really opened his perspective about, you know, what kind of person he was, and how grateful he was about things in his life and what he had versus what other people didn't have. And it was a great reason to travel, to learn and change, you know?
Absolutely. Because when you're traveling, you're outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
You're no longer in comforts of your own home, what you're used to. And so now you're like, you have to adapt and you have to adjust.
Well, this is like when Caucasian people go to Japan and they're like, they feel uncomfortable because they're in places where they're not the lead. And I'm always like, welcome to me. Welcome to our lives, right? We're not in the majority and we're not in power, and I think it's hard for a lot of people, like when they go to like Asia or Africa or Latin America or somewhere.
And sometimes, and they'll have culture shock. And sometimes if you lived abroad for a while and you go back to where you're from, you get reverse culture shock. You're like, oh my, what? I remember when I came back to the States, I'm like, oh my gosh, parking lots? Like there's parking, what is this? So you're like taken aback. But going back to traveling, sometimes you're traveling and you realize, okay, I'm not going to be ever going with that person ever again.
Yeah.
So you kind of like, okay, you have different traveling styles. So,
but that's why you have to have that conversation early.
Yes.
It's better to find out before the trip as much as possible. That's a big piece of advice for my son is like, be careful who you travel with. You can't just travel with everybody. Everyone has totally different style. Like also just, like, are you okay slumming it? Are you not okay with that? Are you okay with, are you okay? Do you have to stay in 4-star hotel or can you stay in a hostel? Are you okay?
What's your budget?
Yeah, what's your budget? Because we might have totally different, what you expect from a vacation might be totally different from what I expect from a vacation.
Right. And what kind of activities do you want to do?
Yeah. It's like living with somebody too. It's like when you live with somebody who's your friend, it's not always a good thing because you're like, oh, this guy's a slob or she's a bitch, right? Like you didn't realize it until you're like living in that situation where they keep the dishes in the sink longer than you'd want the dishes in your sink.
Yeah, and then that's gonna drive you nuts, whatever it may be. I remember my sister's like, "Hey, let's live together," and I'm like, "Oh, I love you. That's not happening."
Yeah.
Ever. And she took offense to it. I'm like, I had to explain, like, we love each other, but we also, don't get along sometimes. And I know your personality, my personality. It's in the long run, it's not gonna work out.
Yeah. This is why I think couples should live together before they get married, because you find out a lot about the person. It's not the same as somebody staying over.
Yeah, it's like the domestic habits, right?
I think it is. Yeah, because you can see like, can you handle, like, the big joke with my wife and I is that like I need my shoes like in a certain spot, and like I can't have it like another spot, and like it drives me nuts unless like that's something that like bothers me or just the way things are. And that if you can't handle it, then you just can't be with that person. And better to find out now than after you get divorced, or after you're married already, right? That makes it a lot harder. But
definitely living with someone, then you have to learn how to compromise.
Or if you're willing to compromise. That's the thing. Like, is
Sure.
it something you can compromise? Like, like for the travel for me, it's like, well, to make my wife's trip better, I'd rather I don't need to run for the plane. It's like, it's okay. We can get there early.
Like cardio that much? No, I'm kidding.
Well, to me, it's just like, I'd rather spend those 2 hours doing something that I think is more fun. Those extra 2 hours where she's like, but for her comfort and for her sanity. Yeah. It just makes her feel better. And it's like, okay, that's fine. And but yeah, I'm willing to make that compromise. Whereas if I'm not, then it's not going to work. We can't travel together. But this is why me and my son we go on a road, like we went on a really long road trip this last summer. And for us, perfect. We had no plans and we just kind of go.
Wait, where'd you go?
We went to like this up through California to like Nevada to Oregon and Washington.
Oh yes.
And we just kind of like stayed, like we went camping. We sometimes stayed in an Airbnb. We sometimes stayed in a hotel, depending on where we were, what we're doing. And it didn't matter. Like it kind of like would, depending on where we are. And like that would drive my wife crazy. Like no real plans. Like she's like, "Where are you guys?" I'm like, "I don't know."
Oh, so okay, so it was just you two.
It's just us two because she couldn't handle that kind of not having a plan, and just drive. Okay, we're gonna drive for 5 hours today. We're gonna drive for 0 hours today. Was the way I like. That's my kind of travel.
Yeah. Funny enough, I've learned to be a little bit more spontaneous because my sister, she's like that. She's like, "All right, what do we feel like doing? Let's go." And so she indirectly influenced me because I'm like, "Oh, I want to be like that. I don't always want to be A to B to C to D,
Yeah.
And ironically, I'm in an industry where it's so sporadic. You don't know what's coming up or what's going to happen. And so just have to give up that control
Yeah. But also think you have to give up opportunity cost, because it also means that I make mistakes. That I might not see the most important thing in that town because I haven't looked into it. Like I didn't know that you could do that because I didn't do any research and I didn't look into it beforehand, right? Whereas if you like, oh, like I'm going to be in a city, what's the most interesting thing to do in the city? Oh, it's you have to see this thing. Well, I might miss it.
Right.
And I think that you have to be okay with that. But then I think on the flip side for me, it's that, well, I might also discover something that's not on, TripAdvisor. Like I might find something that I think is more fun and different than what you found. But like that has to be okay. You have to be okay because you can't have both, right? You can't have both of those things.
Yeah. Did your son get to also pick places to go, or was it all just like based off of what you want to do, or how did that work?
No. I mean, we'd be like, do you want to go hiking over here? Or like we'd see something and he's like, ah, sure. And so then we pull over and then we go hike for a while.
I love
Like,
that.
do you feel like camping or do you feel like going to a hotel? Hotel daddy. Okay, let's go hotel. Like, do you feel like doing this and do that? And,
I love that you give him choices, or
Yeah.
you give him the opportunity to think for himself.
Well, it just means that I don't have to think about it because it's easy if it's like, if we're thinking about like, if I have to find a camping spot, that's a different situation than having to, go find a hotel or something. Luckily, we have like my phone that could do hotels tonight, which makes it really easy and cheap to find great
I mean,
places.
as a kid, I wish I had that opportunity. I mean, I grew up where it had to be this way and you don't question it and you just go with it.
It's called being Asian.
Yeah. And I always said to my parents, I'm like, I wish at the dinner table, you guys asked us, what do you think?
Yeah.
Well, how do you feel about that? Never, ever was I asked that question, or any of us, or any of my siblings. And like, I think that's something that's just, I mean, that's an advice you can even ask your own son, which you're obviously doing, but giving him the opportunity to think on his own.
Oh, yeah, he already thinks on his own. He did it. I don't know that.
I wish it was more like that when I was younger, more independent.
Well, also, I think it has something to do with like, cause my mom and dad were like that too, but I think it has to do with my parents or my mom was an immigrant, and that's not the way immigrants deal with their children. Like, it doesn't matter what I thought, right?
Yeah,
like in terms of things. But I think now, like as an Asian American, as being more Americanized, obviously, I'm more open to like my son having thoughts. And then I care about what he thinks, as opposed to like my mom, who didn't really care.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, she cared, but she didn't like, did she want to hear my thoughts on something? No. Did I offer it? Of course. But, like, does it like, and I think that's just I think that's different. It's also different culturally. Like in America, it's like one of my friends, Quentin Lee, he's a director. He talks a lot about how in Asia, you're not supposed to ask questions. Even if you really need to know something, asking questions is a sign of weakness. And whereas in America, you're expected to ask questions. You're expected, even if you don't have a question, you ask questions. Because that just shows that you're engaged.
Yeah.
Whereas in Asia, like, questions is a weakness. That's why, like, when I speak to international students, especially Asian international students, like, there's never a question. Even if, like, I know that they'd have a question, I could just talk into a room or a Zoom full of people who don't ask me questions. Whereas in America, it'd be like 30 questions over and over and over. They're like, about everybody has to ask me a question at least once. And that's weird. But,
like my sister, she's an attorney, and she would explain, whatever it is. And I go, but how does this work? And then that, and that, and that. And she goes, do you have any more questions? I'm like, I can't help it. I'm so curious. I don't know this industry and I want to learn more. And so I have a source, you. So I'm going to ask away. I love questions.
Yeah, me too. Well, on that note, thank you so much, Jennifer. It was really great talking to you. And
likewise.
And thank you everyone for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe to this podcast. And if you have time, also check out my other podcast, Best or Worst Podcast, where me and Martin ask people about their best or worst moment. And thank you again, Jennifer. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.